What's up? What's up? What's up? It's your boy, the network. And today's topic is configure and verify default routing. Same topic as last video, except this is part 2 of a 4-part series. Yes, I decided to split this topic up into 4 parts because there was just so much material. We're going to be focusing on default routes, specifically using EIGRP to propagate those default routes. Let's go ahead and take a look at the exam blueprint. Let's see where we came from and where we are headed. All right, so this is the blueprint implementing Cisco IP routing. This is going to be for the CCNP route exam code 300-101. It's version 2.0. Make sure you're studying for the correct material. We just wrapped up the same topic, which was configure and verify default routing. As you can see, there's no subsections for this topic. However, I decided to split it into 4 parts. It was just, like I said, it was just so much material, and I wanted to try to keep these videos under 30 minutes, so we might even go over 30 minutes with this video because of the so much material and examples that I wanted to give y'all. After that, we're going to do, actually, the other 2 parts. So this is part 2 of the 4-part series again. And once we wrap this section up, we're going to move on to evaluate routing protocol types. So we talked about default routing, obviously, in the last video, and what it is, right? So default route is basically when you in your neighborhood, we always compare our networks to roads and stuff like that, right? You need to get to a specific city that is like a remote city, another city of where you're not at, but you don't know how to get there. You just know how to get out of your neighborhood, or you need to know how to just at least get out of your neighborhood. The road that take you out of your neighborhood will be your default route, because you know, okay, this road I know will take me out of here. Once you get out of there, then, you know, once you're out in the wild, in the wilderness somewhere, from there you'll figure your way on out by looking at signs or whatever, routing updates, etc. I know I always compare these stuff to roads. That's just one thing I've found myself doing because that's what they are akin to. Again, this is some corny imagery, default routing, right? That is not a default route. We know what a default route is, all right? If you want a real good definition, or at least, you know, a breakdown of it, look in the last video, part 1, on what exactly a default route is. Well, we explained it. That was just my way of explaining it. I didn't give you an official definition. I'll put the official definition in the comment comment section below, in the notes below. So there's 3 ways to configure a default route in EIGRP. So remember, we talked about default routes. You can have it learned from another router, right? But we are going to use, in this video, we're going to use EIGRP to share those routes. So it's kind of like, you know, we found a way to get out of our neighborhood, right? And then we phone back home to be like, hey, if you want to get out of the neighborhood, you're going to take this road, and it's going to take you out of the neighborhood. From there, we'll be able to go to Vegas or LA or whatever city you need to get to. Us making that phone call would be the routing protocol sharing the default route. So we are, in these terms, we call it propagating routes, right? So, or sometimes redistributing a route. As you can see here, there are 3 ways to configure a default route, right? You can redistribute a static default route. We know what a static route is, right? It's always one way to get somewhere. We created it. The administrative distance is always 1, and it's always just one way to get there. You could also configure a default network and then propagate that through EIGRP. We talked about what a default network is, right? Default network is not necessarily, it's a static route, but we're saying we're not defining a forwarding address to get out of our network. We are defining a network that will take us out to the internet or to another network. So we're defining a network that will take us to anywhere else we need to go. Or we can use what's called a summary address. We're going to talk about what summarization is and how to do it, I believe, in another section. This section is, I guess ain't no separate section. I guess I need to show y'all what summarization is, huh? There it is. Configure and verify auto and manual summarization. So once we get in that, we'll talk about how to summarize a route. Well, anyways, if you study CCNP at this level, you should at least know how to summarize. Basically, you take if you got 3 or 4 different addresses, right? You flip those in binary. And the reason why we do that is because if you have 4 or 5 routes, that can, you know, it'll be too much space or even more than that, if you have multiple routes to get to several networks, you can combine them to just compress them into just one address. So that way, okay, just take, if you want to get to Vegas, you could just take this road instead of saying, okay, you could go this way to go. No, that's not a good example. You got like a whole bunch of addresses. You compressing them into one. It's kind of like an average, so to speak, an average IP address, if that makes any sense. Okay, so you could use a summary address, and I'll show y'all how to do that. And yes, packet tracer. But believe it or not, once we get to I believe configuring a default network, we're gonna do that in with physical hardware. So I'm gonna show y'all my rack, and we are going to configure a default route. So it's not all gonna be. Remember, we said we try and stay away from packet tracer, but y'all know how much I love packet tracer. All right, so we can redistribute a static route. That's the first thing you can do. Step 1, configure a static default route. Right? We talked about what a default route is. Right? Quad 0 route. Quad 0 subnet is quad 0, and then the network on the forwarding address of how you can get there. So you do that, and then step 2, you go into router configuration mode and use the redistribute static. I should have done this in bold right here. Redistribute static command. You could do that. That will redistribute the static default route. So basically what you're doing is you define the static default route, right? And then you just go into router config mode, like for in this case we're gonna use EIGRP to basically share that route, that static route. Let everybody know, hey, y'all wanna know how to get out of this neighborhood? This is how you do it. With just one command, really. And this is redistribute static. It's really easy. I'll show y'all. So yeah, or you go in router config mode into the network quad 0 command. This works only if the static route is in the table already. So you have to define that static route like we did in step 1, and then you could go into router config mode and do network quad 0. So you could either do network quad 0 or redistribute static, and that will share the default route using EIGRP. So remember, either redistribute static or network quad 0. But they both got to, you got to go into router config mode. So router EIGRP, and then the AS number, or the process number, I believe that is. Yeah, that's the AS number. And then from there, right, static route, which interface you can go out to get to it. And then the router EIGRP10, that's the routing process, not the AS. The AS is BGP. And then redistribute static. That's the last method. Or you could do, instead of that, you do network quad 0. Let me show you an example in packet tracer. Okay, so we got packet tracer propagating a default route in EIGRP for IPv4 and IPv6. So we're going to do this in both types of addressing, using both types of addressing. Let's go ahead and review this topology here. We got a local area network behind branch 1. Also behind branch 2. Branch router 2. We also got these two that are in IPv6, branch 3 and branch 4, right? And we got the internet here in the middle, and we got some outside hosts that we could use to test our configurations. That's the addressing guide. You can pause it, freeze frame it if you want to. Step 1, we're going to propagate the default route in EIGRP. I'm not going to read this to y'all. Display the routing table of each enabled IPv4 router and verify that the IPv routes are enabled. So let's go ahead and do that. Enable show IP route, right? So we got, remember the L's are our actual interfaces. L/32, that's our actual interfaces. So that's this guy and that guy, right? That's the L's, right? Then we also have these connector routes, which are the networks that are connected to our router. The 6.0 network, which is, I believe, here. The 7.0 network, which we learned, actually, no, that's not L. This is L, another L. The 8.0 network, which I believe is the local area network, right here. Yeah, because it's the GI, right? And then we have our route that we learned in EIGRP. This guy right here. No, sorry, this guy right here. So we learned about the 7.0 network, which I believe is the I believe is this network over here. 7.0 network is the serial 000. Yeah, so it's that network. Right. And then we also have the this EIGRP network that we learned, which is the 9.0 network. That's branch 2's local area network. That's the 9.0 network. This right here. So he learned that route. Branch 1 learned about this network using EIGRP, right? But what he don't have is a default route, right? And we're going to configure default route in IPv4 edge. I'm not going to show y'all the routing table for this guy over here. It's similar. It's just going the other way, really. You'll configure a directly connected IPv4 default route on IPv4 edge. Right? So we need configure a default route to how to get to the internet, right? Enable. Let's do a show CDP neighbor detail so we can see what our ISP's router is, right? So there's branch 1, 6.2. and IPS IPv4. So that's the internet router right here. This guy. 209.165.200.225, right? So we know that's the internet router. We need to create a static route to get to that, right? 209.165.200.225. Let's do that. Remember how to create the default route, right? Go to config mode, IP route, quad 0. 0.0.0 and then 209 what he said it was. Oh, we should have done it over here, huh? Let's do this. Do show CDP neighbor detail, and what we said it was. Wait a minute, how he got it? IPv4 edge. Oh, we on the branch router. We learned it through that guy right there. So we just need to create the default route to get to the internet on the IPv4 edge router. So configure terminal IP route quad 0. Subnet is also quad 0. We need to get to this guy. How do you know what the subnet mask is, though? That's the question for me. No, we don't need the subnet mask. We just need the exact IP address. So 209.165.200.225, right? So now we created an IP route. I almost messed y'all up there. We created a default route to get to the internet, but he don't know it. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to step 3, configure the EIGRP routing process to propagate the route. So basically, we only use EIGRP to share this default route. You would think because he know how to get to the edge router should be able to know how to get to the internet. If we ping something out here, I don't know. Maybe if anybody knows the answer to that, put it in the comments below. But basically, we need to share the default route with him, so that way he has a route to get there to the internet. The way we do that is we need to go to router. Well, let's see what our routing process is. Show IP, let's do show IP protocols. Learned that from, well, I ain't learned it. I've been knew about this command, but he told me to don't forget about that. That you will get some information that you need from it. It's really helpful. Show IP protocols. Learned that from, I ain't learned it, but LAN Tamer. The LAN Tamer, shout out to the LAN Tamer, reminded me about this command. Okay, so the routing protocol is EIGRP1. That's the process we want to put our we want to redistribute our static command in. And notice it's not in here. You'll be able to see the redistribute static here too. See, notice right here it says redistributing EIGRP1. So we're not just that, we're just redistributing that process, right? So he know about the EIGRP routes, but he don't know about the static routes. How do we do that? We go to router, EIGRP1, redistribute static, and now we just redistributed the static. So now we could go to show IP, Control Z. I hate this command. Y'all know how to get out of this, right? Pop quiz. No IP domain lookup. That way you're not going to run into this problem right here. Because now you got to wait because DNS is, while we're waiting, I guess I can explain that to y'all. Basically, I made a typo right here. And it just read it as a word. like an IP, not an IP address, but a website. So basically, it said, let me try to figure out what the IP address is. So right now, it's trying to translate that. We don't want that. So the way we can turn that off is no IP domain lookup. You ain't gonna run into the problem. So if you want to do any typos, it's not gonna try to resolve the domain name to an IP address. Let's go ahead and cue the Jeopardy theme song here. I'll probably edit this out. Nah, I like my explanation of no IP domain. All right, so now what we could do is we redistributed static route. So now we can do show IP protocols, and now you can see we are redistributing not only the EIGRP process, but also we are redistributing a static route. That's what that is. Let's do the same thing on IPv6. Enable, configure, terminal. First thing they want us to do is display the routing table. Do show IP route. Oh, you see there's nothing there, right? Know why? Because we need to see the IPv6 routes. Do show IPv6 route. And there's our routes right there. Pause it, freeze frame if you want to. We need to configure a directly connected IPv6 default route on IPv6 edge. So the way you do a default route is, remember, it's quad 0 in IPv6. In IPv4. In IPv6, it is IPv6 route. And then it's not quad 0, but colon, because remember, you can compress all quad zeros to colon. Then you have to do /0. My bad. IPv6 route, and then quad 0 /0. That's basically the same thing as quad 0 for IPv. This for IPv6 though. So it's colon /0. That's basically a default route. And then you do the outgoing interface, serial 0/1/0. And then the next thing we got to do is redistribute the static route there. IPv6 route router EIGRP 1 redistribute static. And there you go. That's what we needed to do, y'all. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to we redistributed the static route in IPv4 and IPv6. You could also propagate a default route using default network. So as you can see right here, you must flag a classful network to be used as a default route. So remember, we are doing a classful network. A network address, basically. So you're going to type in IP default network, and then that will be your default, basically your default route when you type in that command. And so like if you look at this topology right here, you got this router going to that way. We did this in last video. We got 2513 got a route to this way and route to that loopback address. But if we want to make one of these our default route, like let's say this whole thing, like both of them can take you to the internet. But if we want let's say we want this one to be our default route, we would type in IP default network, and then this IP address is network, not the actual loopback address. So in this case, it would be 198. It's a /24, so 198.10.1.0. Let's do an example of this using physical hardware. That's right, physical hardware. I'm gonna show y'all. I'm gonna go upstairs and show y'all my rack. Let's go ahead and pause it right here. All right, so we went upstairs, and I'm about to show y'all my physical hardware. We have right here. So these are my routers and switches. My lab right here. I'm gonna show y'all that's gonna be the. I'm gonna show y'all the rest of this stuff in another video, in a separate video. Top router right here, we have a 1841 router. These next two are both 2821 routers, right? This is going to be router 1, that's going to be router 2, and it's going to be router 3 for this topology right here. So this is going to be router 1, router 2 is labeled 3, and then router 3 right here. We got a couple more switches and routers right here. They are not going to be part of the topology. Again, I'm going to do a separate video of my whole rack here. I actually have more than this, believe it or not. These two routers right here, I got them for $5 each. The app was called Offer Up. I got it from a dude. He had them on there sitting for a while in his garage. So make sure, check out that app. It's called Offer Up. Better than Craig. I ain't say it's better than Craigslist, but you know, I just happened to find the guy on there. So, all right, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this scenario right here. If you want to pause it, freeze frame it, I'll go ahead and read it to y'all. Whatever. You run into a strange problem. Basically, we're gonna be using the IP default network command. All right. All right. So that's the scenario. We are now consoled into router 3. Let's go ahead and change that to router 1. I need an access server, so I'm gonna have to. I got one console cable, and I'm doing this one at a time, y'all. I'm gonna get, if anybody want to donate to your boy. That was kind of loud in here. All right, so all the IP addresses have been pre-configured for you. For me, I already pre-configured them on this. We have to configure AS router EIGRP AS12 as the following: do not disable auto summarization. Advertise those two networks right here. And do not use any other network commands. When you're done, you have completed this lab when you see the following when you type show IP route on router 1, right? So we need to see this right here, gateway of last resort 10.12.12.2 to network 172.33.00, which is the loopback interface. That's the network where the loopback interface is on router 3. I believe, let's double check to see if I configured that already. I believe I did already though. We're gonna go into router 3, show IP interface brief. I really do, yes. So there it is. That's the loopback address. We need a command that'll take us there, right? Which is IP default network. We discussed that. Now I'm gonna console back into router 1. Okay, let's see here. Configure router EIGRP. We're gonna do EIGRP AS12, right? So configure terminal router EIGRP 12, and then we need to advertise those two networks, right? 172.23.23.0, and the subnet mask is 255.255.0. My bad. What am I missing here, y'all? Network, right? Network. Same thing. Network 172. No, my bad. We need to do 10 network, which is this guy right here. We need to advertise EIGRP out of that network. This is 10.12.12.0, right? What interface is that? That should be FA00 interface. Oh, that's what am I doing here? Oh, that's because these are router. I believe that's router 3's interfaces. My bad. That's why I got confused there. So 255.255.255.0. Let's go ahead and do a show IP interface brief so we can see what we're working with on router 1. That's what I got confused about, right? So we are, I believe we're done with router 1. Let's go ahead and console into router 2. I really need an access server, y'all. I've been looking at this. I've been looking at an access server, and I've also looked at one of those async modules that you can plug, octal cables. I'll show y'all maybe in another video. So we need to configure terminal, router, EIGRP, process number 12, network 172. Let's go ahead and do the 10 network first so we can see EIGRP build 12. That's going to be, we should see a neighbor relationship between those two when we do this. 12.0, 255.255.255.0. And now we got an adjacency. I love doing this on hardware when you see this, man. It's a good feeling. I know, like I said, you can virtualize all of this stuff, but it's just something about having this, being able to do it on hardware and knowing that you have the skills, basically. All right, so now we need to advertise EIGRP out of the other network, which is 172. 23.23.0, 255.255.255.0. One thing is that these things are loud and they use a lot of processing power. I mean, actual, electricity. I haven't seen my bill gone up too much yet because I really don't run these too often, but I'm gonna try to for more of these videos. All right, so we're done with router 2. Let's go ahead and console into router 3, right? We've seen the interfaces on these guys. I'll show y'all again, right? So now we need to configure neighbor relationship with those two guys, right? So router, no, we got to go to configure terminal. Okay, my bad. So what we got to do is create a static route to the network that the loopback address is in. And then, so what we're going to do is IP route, create a static route to the loopback, 172.33.0.0, the network, not the actual IP. And then 255.255.0.0, right? That's the network that this loopback is in. That's the subnet mask, right? See that? We take this interface, right, which is 172.23.23.3. All right, we created a static route to this, right? Now let's do a show IP. Actually, let's see if we can ping that loopback address, 33.3.3. And now we can. And now if we do, so we created a static route to that. So now if we do a show IP route, you can see there it is right there. Static route to that network. Right? We haven't created one to the loopback, but we know how to get to the loopback. And that's where it says it here. Gateway of last resort is that. But we need that to be on router 1. Is it on router 1 yet? Consoling into router 1, show IP route. You can see it's not. We don't even have a gateway of last resort set. Let's go back to router 2. We need to, let's see if we can redistribute a static route. What's the do show IP protocols, so we can see, we know that it's process number 12. There's also EIGRP 1. I don't remember doing that. Anyway, let's router EIGRP 12 and redistribute that static route you would think it should be redistribute default network or something, right? So once we do that and do a show IP protocols, we can see now we are distributing EIGRP12 plus the static route. So we go back to router 1 and do a show IP routes and see we have that, but that's not our default network. We've learned the static route, and we probably could ping 172.33.3.3, but that's not our default gateway, so we're going to try, let's make that our default gateway on here. Default, configure network, configure terminal, IP default network 172.33.3.3. Do show IP route. That's not what we wanted either. So A, and then IP default network, and let's try the loopback addresses network, which is 172.33.0.0. Excuse me. And there you go. We had to make the network of the loopback address to be IP default network. You see that? So basically, we had to do this command right here. I think we put it on router 2 and we put it on router 1. We probably didn't need to put it on router 2. Can we ping router 3 now? 172.33.3.3. And we can. Good to go. So let's move along. That was pretty hard. It wasn't that hard, but I just had to remember how to do it. Use a summary address. This is only effective when you want to advertise only the default route. I'm going to go ahead and shut these bad boys off. I didn't save the config. They are loud as hell. I don't know if y'all can hear now. This is only effective when you want to advertise only the default route, as no other routes will be advertised out the interface. This is done in interface config mode, like below. So you go in the interface, and you basically broadcasting a summary address. You know what a summary address is, right? You compressing. You got a whole bunch of addresses. You compressing them into one, like we did in last video. I might do a whole video on summarization, because that was one topic I kind of struggled with, even though it was kind of easy. Once I seen it, I was like, oh, that's easy. So let's go ahead and use a summary address to broadcast a default route in EIGRP. And we're going to do that in Packet Tracer. I believe I made my own example here. Okay, so we got, let's take a look at this here. We got router 1, router 2, 3, and 4, right? We got a couple network. We got this 192.168 network here, 192.168.10.0 network, and then the 168.8.0 network here, right? And then we got these loopbacks right here, right? So let's see what it says here. Step 1, use autonomous system number 1 and disable auto summary for all routers. All right, so enable, configure terminal router, EIGRP1, and we need to advertise for the network 168.0.0, 192.168.0.0, and router 1 and router 2, we need to advertise for that network, same network, enable, router, configure, terminal, router, EIGRP1, network 192.168.0.0. All right, so now we got an adjacency between these two guys right here, right? So now network 8.0, 192.168.8.0. We also want to do one for 10.0, which is up here. Network 192.10.0. Let's go to router 3. Advertise the EIGRP. Enable router. Configure terminal router EIGRP1. Network 192.168.10.0. And network 192.168.11.0. And router 3, we need to do the 8 network and the 9 network. My bad, router 4, that's supposed to say. I put the wrong instructions there. Router EIGRP1, network 192.168.8.0. So we got a neighbor, and then we want to advertise 192.168.9.0. That's the loopback address. So we advertise for that network, but that's the loopback for that one. And this one is the 11.0. That was the loopback for that one. Right? Verify EIGP neighbors and save our configs. I'm not gonna save the config, but we seen the messages come up. We got neighbors. Let's just pick one and do it. Do show IP EIGRP neighbors, and as you can see, router 2, he's the hub basically. He got 3 neighbors. So 1, 2, 3 neighbors, as you can see. You ain't got to do the rest of them. Analyze the routing table and pay attention to the metrics of learned routes. So let's go ahead and do show IP routes. And the metric we got is 138.16 to the 11.0 network. Right, same thing for the 9.0 network. So that's and then the 80 is 90 for both. Right, and 80 is 90 for both, but the metrics for the 11 and the 9 network are 138.16, right? Those guys right there. After we do summarization, compare this to the one with the summary metric, all right? We're going to configure the summary route as shown below, and then analyze the routing table again. So we need to put that command, basically. I made it super easy. That way we ain't got to try to remember all this. But we know what we're doing here. So on who needs to summarize that address? Router 2 does. But he needs to summarize these addresses, all these addresses, right, to that interface, right? So, and that's that's basically the summarized address. This is a slash, what is that? Slash 21. That's a slash 21, I believe that is. Yeah. So we're gonna we need to go to that interface right there, right, which is the serial interface. Let's do a show IP interface brief. See which serial interface. So that interface right there, interface. Let's exit out of that interface. Serial 0.1.0.1.0, and then IP summary address. Yeah, this is not really one that makes sense, but that's how you basically do it. You basically taking the summarized address and redistributing it through EIGRP. And that's how they learn about it. So you do IP summary address. You actually got to do I put a 1 there. Why did I do that? I think that's a mistake. IP summary address, and then the address 192 EIGRP, because we distributed through that. Oh yeah, you got to do the AS number. That's why. 1 and then 192.8.0. Sorry, 168.8.0. Subnet mask 248.0, and it's up. And did I do that right? I went to the correct what AS number was that? That was AS number 1. Yeah, it sure enough is. 8.0, 255, 248. What am I doing wrong here? Whatever. Let's do a show IP route on this guy. On this guy. Do show IP routes. And now he got a summarized address of that. These guys still have the same metrics. So we did that wrong. You know what? I believe we got to put that summarized address in router 1. So let's fix that. No. So A, no. Right? And then we're going to take, we are bouncing EIGRP with this. We're going to take this guy and punch it in the serial interface of this guy and do show IP interface brief, and believe we got to put it in the serial interface right there with the IP address. So let's exit out of that. IP interface serial 0.1.0, and then let's paste that guy. That might be it. We got a summarized address there. I don't see why it wouldn't be it. Do show IP routes. So now you got a summarized address. Let's remove that. Show a no and put it back on that guy. It needs to be the serial interface, so I don't know why that ain't work. It's 252. This is a summary address, y'all. I'm kind of confused here, but let's see. Subnet mask is 252. My bad. Control A. Get rid of that guy. And there it is. So now, this is supposed to be 252, y'all. That's the summarized address. I did that wrong. Show IP routes. Do show IP routes. And now, you can see the metrics are still the same. It's a 90. And now if we check router 1 and see what his do show IP routes, you got a summarized address right there. His gateway's last resort is not set, but he has a summarized address to get to anywhere else. Let's see if we can ping 11.0 network. The loop back on router 3. We just basically gonna have him ping router 3. Do ping loop back is 192.168.11.1 and success rate. That was a long one, so we go do part 3 in the next video. If you like this video, please comment, like, subscribe to the network.